Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Director Tom Hackney, Director of Investigations and Homeland Security with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. I'll give you some of the details surrounding this officer-involved shooting that we had this morning. At around 8:47 this morning, 911 was called in reference to a fight in one of the apartments in Cleveland Arms Apartments, 5020 Cleveland Road. Two officers are dispatched to this. This is a loud domestic disturbance, as it's given to us. Two officers are dispatched. The first officer arrives and goes into the apartment and finds, as he arrives, he can hear the disturbance from outside, hear a woman screaming, and that's the information that's given on the call. As the officer goes inside, he finds a subject on top of a female strangling her in the back bedroom of the apartment. The officer begins to give commands to that subject. He takes his taser out and points his taser at the subject. Our tasers are equipped with a laser, and that is called red dot compliance. The subject sees that the taser's been deployed and stops strangling the victim at that point in time. At around that time, our second officer, who's dispatched, arrives, hears the disturbance, again goes inside the apartment, sees the subject stopping strangling the woman, gives orders for him to get off of her. Subject does. He moves over, gets on his knees off of the victim, then tells him he's under arrest, put his hands behind his back. At that point in time, the compliance which the subject had been giving stopped. They went in to move in to handcuff him. Subject began to wrestle with the two officers, got up and began to fight. Subject began to get up and exit the apartment, running down the hallway. The first officer discharged his taser at the subject. That did not strike the subject, struck the door frame. Probe's actually stuck in the door frame. Subject continues to run from the apartment, runs out the front door. The second officer attempts to discharge his taser. Subject shuts the door behind him. Those taser probes strike the door. Subject flees the apartment on foot. One of the two officers gives foot pursuit. Subject leaves that apartment and runs around the apartment building to another apartment building. And these two doors that I'm going to mention are right next to each other. There's no separation between them, one apartment and another apartment. He sees the subject banging on one door of an apartment, attempting to get somebody to answer the door. As he rounds the corner, he sees him move from that door to the next door, bangs one time, then kicks in the door to that apartment and enters. That officer gives pursuit, goes in behind. Obviously, at that point in time, he's certainly concerned that this already violent subject has now entered another apartment. He gives pursuit, goes in and finds the subject making his way through that apartment. When the subject realizes that officer had gotten behind him, he opens the back door and flees through that. Now, that apartment was occupied by a woman and her three children, a 12-year-old, an 11-year-old, and an 8-year-old, who were inside that apartment. She knew him only as a neighbor, didn't know him, heard him beating the door, came in, sees him inside of her living room, obviously upset and concerned. Subject flees out the back door with that same officer in pursuit behind him. Goes around another building, comes around the corner. As the officer is surrounding that corner, he sees the subject at another front door, banging on that front door. That officer fears that this is probably going to be the same thing that had just happened, that he may try to make entry, burglarize another apartment. This entire time, when he sees him fleeing the apartment upstairs, when he's running down the steps, when he's making his way into this other apartment, he's giving him loud verbal commands: stop, you're under arrest, comply. Subject does not comply at any of those times. So as he sees him at this front door of this last apartment, subject is attempting to bang on this door. He gives loud verbal commands then as well: stop, you're under arrest, comply. Subject does not do it. The officer takes his taser, fires his taser at that subject. The probes struck the subject, according to the officer. For whatever reason, the taser did not have the effect on the subject that would obviously be desired. Subject either fought through the tase or it didn't affect him like it should have. At that point in time, the officer moves in to make the physical arrest. As he moves in to make the physical arrest, a struggle ensues. The subject disarms the officer of his taser. Subject takes full control of the taser from the officer. Subject turns and points the taser at the officer. The officer clears the distance between himself and the officer and the subject. Officer discharges his issued firearm at the subject. The subject is hit in the extremities as well as the chest. The same officer who discharged his firearm goes to get his first aid kit from his car, comes back, provides first aid to the subject until fire rescue gets there. That subject is transported to UF Health, taken into surgery, and is in critical but stable condition at this time. The officer involved in this has been placed on administrative leave which is standard for our policy. Again, it should be noted that this subject who was involved in this had multiple opportunities to comply. Obviously, he didn't have to put his hands around the neck of this woman in attempts to strangle her. That could have been his first mistake. When he complied and stopped, our level of force was commensurate with that. We did not tase him at that time. What he was required by law to do at that point in time is submit to the arrest, which he was told he was under. He failed to do so. He took the matter into his own hands at that point in time by continuing to resist the arrest, by continuing to flee from the officer. He obviously committed another crime, a burglary to an occupied residence. With this, again, the entire time, this is in his hands to stop and give up and submit to the arrest. When he goes and fights the officer and disarms him, that officer has a reasonable expectation to believe that if that taser is used on him, the next thing that could happen is that officer become disarmed from his firearm, and that firearm could be used against him. This man has shown a propensity towards violence and a propensity of dangerousness to the community, and unfortunately, the work that police officers do around this country and here in Jacksonville is that of a dangerous job. This is demonstrated today. One of the more dangerous things that we have to do as police officers is become involved in domestic disputes. That today, this domestic dispute led to this subject being shot. I can answer a few questions from the media if they have any.
What was the name of the man?
I could give you that information. The man involved is 22-year-old Devanta Jones.
How's that spelled?
D-E-V-A-N-T-A. Common spelling on Jones. And the officer involved is 8-year veteran Officer Cliff Sames.
Has Sames had any other incidents like this in the past?
This is Officer Sames' third officer-involved shooting. The first one was back in 2008 when he was actually shot in the shoulder. The second one was, I believe, in 2013, and then this one today.
How is same spelled?
S-A-M-E-S.
So obviously you think that he followed your department's protocol in this particular shooting?
I don't want to make rash judgments here. You know, we take these officer-involved shootings and uses of force very seriously. The state attorney's office is out here. They conduct a separate investigation into the use of deadly force in this case. As in all cases, they will conduct that investigation. We will conduct a criminal investigation into the officer's use of force, and after that's concluded, there'll be an administrative investigation into the officer's use of force. As the years have gone by, we're not afraid to make arrests in these cases. We're not afraid to use the disciplinary actions that we see fit. Officers have been fired in the past for their use of force when it comes to find out that it's not within our policy. But those are rash judgments to say today would or wouldn't be either within or without policy. We're going to let that investigation lead us down the road that the evidence shows.
How many times did they shot?
A lot of...
It appears that the subject was shot at least 4 times. The officer discharged his firearm 6 times. But again, those are some preliminary information that we have from the hospital, as well as the evidence at the scene.
He's in surgery as far as you know?
Supposedly he's completed his surgery now. He's recovering, critical but stable.
Why multiple shots?
Why multiple shots at the subject who was pointing the taser at the officer? The officers are taught to use force until the force is no longer a threat. I won't put words in any officer's mouth. I have to assume that the officer thought the force that he used was reasonable based on the threat that he received.
Also, there are obviously a lot of witnesses or people standing by in the apartment. We received several reports that there were threats of him being arrested, chased to, I guess, protesters. Is that true?
I haven't heard anything like that. We've got multiple detectives on the scene. We're looking for people who are actual eyewitnesses to the event. Those who may have heard or thought they saw something are of importance to us, but those who actually did eyewitness this event are the ones who we're talking to and seeing. You know, I've said this before, we will work to preserve and protect individuals' right to protest, this being included. If it's safe, if it doesn't impede traffic is within the law, we, the sheriff's office, are certainly going to work as hard to protect their rights to protest as they have the right to protest. So,
Are there surveillance cameras around the complex?
it's part of what we're looking into. It would be nice to know that we had some. I'm not real sure whether or not there's anything that's going to be of value to us today or not.
But so there are surveillance cameras.
We're looking into that. I can't say that there are or there aren't, but I can say that if there are, we'll certainly look into it and see what value they bring.
The apartment that the guy went into, there were 3 children who were saying, what are their ages?
12, 11, and 8.
About how far was the officer on the fire?
It was within close proximity. Again, I won't know that until but it was within that close proximity.
The mother of the kids, were they touched at all by this guy? Did he
No,
do anything to them?
Apparently, as he made entry into this apartment, it kind of shocked her that she came out, heard the beating on the door, then heard the door come in. She comes out and finds him kind of making his way through the living room. That's when Officer Sames saw what had occurred, went into the apartment, and I believe the fact that he saw Officer Sames in there, he wanted to continue fleeing and not be arrested, so he went out the back door.
But he attempted to go into multiple apartments, correct?
He attempted to go into at least 3 apartments. He beat on one door first. When there was no answer there, for whatever reason, he moved to the next one. He beat on that. That's the door he kicked in, went into. And then when the final confrontation occurred, the officer observed him beating on the door of, that was apartment 199. So there's at least 3 apartments that he had some interest in getting into.
You said this originally started as a fight between this man and this woman. Were there children present at the time?
I don't know the answer to that. This was a 911 call to the sheriff's office in reference to a domestic abuse case, which was witnessed by the first officer on the scene.
Is it just boyfriend, girlfriend, or?
I don't know their relationship, to be honest with you. That's something we'll look into. But it certainly, regardless of what their relationship is or isn't, strangulation was witnessed by that first officer.
Mm-hmm. Any criminal past in this guy that you know about?
I'll get that. I'm going to have a follow-up news conference tomorrow morning at 10:30. Can look a little bit more into some of these questions we have about some of the physical evidence at the scene, as well as the criminal background of the subject that's involved.
This briefing, I guess, comes a little bit longer after the incident, maybe than normally, is that because of extended investigation?
This was, keep in mind, we had 3 separate scenes within this apartment complex. You had the first scene of the domestic abuse, the second scene where he made the burglary to an occupied residence, and then the third final scene where the shooting was involved. That takes a little bit longer to get through. I don't try to come do these news conferences without some degree of information to pass on to the public. I don't rush to do them based on anybody's time frame. The evidence and the information dictates when I'll come out.
Between the 2 officers, they attempted to tase him 3 times, is that how I heard it?
That's correct.
And Officer Same attempted twice?
Officer Sames attempted twice. The first shot by Officer Sames stuck in the door frame. The second actually struck the subject and had no effect, as I mentioned.
Not knowing how tasers work, is it just a simple reload of the probe?
Yes, the taser that we have can be used in several different ways. One, it can be used with the probes, where the probes are fired from the taser. 2 probes are fired attached to wires, and the electrical charge is given by the probes. With the cartridge that's on the taser, a touch stun or a drive stun that we call it, DRI release stun, can be used as a taser deployment with the cartridge on, or without the cartridge on, the taser could still be used and deliver its full force with the touch stun as well. So there's 3 different methods that taser could be used or deployed.
But his 2 shots were probe-based?
His 2 shots were probe-based, correct.
The officer who did the shooting thought that he might be shot with his own taser.
Well, there's the fear that the taser can be used to disable the officer, and once the officer becomes disabled by the use of a taser, then you can easily be disarmed of the gun that you carry. Keep in mind that every encounter that a police officer goes to is an armed encounter. We carry our firearms on our side, so everything that we do could potentially result in an armed encounter. If we become disarmed of our gun, that's the only gun that we have, and the officer's life's obviously in danger.
Anything else?
Again, 10:30 tomorrow morning, I'll have some additional information on follow-up.